It's time for Michael Morales Torres and Lucha Libre Online.
Saludos a toda la afición de la lucha libre. Este que les habla es Michael Morales Torres, integrante del equipo de Lucha Libre Online. Y tenemos el enorme privilegio de presentarles a nuestro invitado especial en la tarde de hoy, de Estados Unidos para el mundo, el compositor que marcó nuestras vidas con los mejores temas que hemos escuchado de la WWE. Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Johnston is in the house. Jim, it is an honor for us to have a living legend inside the pro wrestling and music industry with us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Excellent. Thanks for having me. It's flattering to be asked.
Thank you for being here.
And join your audience. It's great. It's exciting for me.
It is exciting for us as well. And we wanted to start this interview asking you about how did your passion for music started? I mean, which artist, record, music video, or live performance inspire you enough to say, oh my God, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life?
I think the artists that, certainly the Beatles, were the first artists I really noticed and said, like, holy crow. I mean, holy crow, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. But growing up as a kid, I just noticed music. My grandmother was an opera singer, and she played the organ in her church every Sunday of her life. So she had an impact on me. My dad messed around with music. We had music in school when I was a kid. So I was very impacted already. But then when I experienced the Beatles, I was done. That was officially, it was over.
I'll translate that to Spanish. ¿Qué artista o qué performance enamoró a Jim Johnston de la escena de la música? Simple, los Beatles. Los Beatles fueron esos artistas que marcaron su vida, que él dijo como que holy crow, esto es. Su abuela, pues obviamente tuvo que ver, al igual que el resto de su familia, pero los Beatles fueron esos artistas que principalmente lo marcaron. Jim, how did you arrive in the WWE for the first time? I mean, who was the person responsible for your signing? Because this was a game changer.
Well, first of all, I wasn't signed. I met a guy named Brian Penry at a local sushi restaurant. And there were very, very few sushi restaurants back then. So it was pretty much like going to a local bar where you go and you see the same 12 people every time you go. So this was something, you see the same 8 people, and we'd had a couple of conversations and kind of had a little feel for each other. And one night he came in and said, like, didn't you say you write music? And I said, yeah. And he said, because I'm in my job, my boss asked me to put together a video for a cable conference, and I guess do the video, but I have no idea how to do the music. So could you do that? And this was for the NAPI convention, and his boss was Vince. And so I did the music. Vince liked the music. Vince and I met, and Vince and I just basically were like 2 peas in a pod. We just hit it off great. And he was really he had really quite recently bought the company from his dad. So he was really getting started. I mean, they were on one floor of a building, and oh my God, maybe 7 employees. I don't know. There's like basically Vince and Linda had an office in the other corner, and Brian had his art studio, and then everybody else were wrestlers on the road. And then it just sort of happened, Vince would say, like, well, what do you think? Should we give music to this guy? There was no music. One of my favorite stories is that I believe is true. I don't know if it's true, but it sounds true. Is right after Vince took the thing over and was starting to have music in the shows, his dad said, like, if you keep putting music in these shows, you're going to ruin this product. So obviously Dad missed on that one, but so we just started, early on, it was only baby faces got music. Heels didn't get music and then that kind of became the trademark. If you came out without music, it meant you were a loser. And if you had a theme, it meant, there was like great credibility at that point because not that many people had themes. So you basically had to be someone who was having considerable success and was really popular with the crowd before you'd even be considered. And it just built from there. We just trying different things. And in the beginning, it was so simple. Oh my God, the themes were so simple. But it was such the overall emotional impact we could see from the start was like, oh my God, does this make a difference?
And it did. I'll translate that briefly to Spanish. En aquel momento dado, fue Brian Henry la primera persona que le ofreció la oportunidad. Él iba a esta barra en donde todo el tiempo eran las mismas personas en la barra, las mismas 7, 8, 12 personas. Y, oye, tú no hacías música, le dijo Brian a él. Y él dice, si yo hago música, pues mi jefe, Vince McMahon, me pidió que hiciera un video musical. Pues yo sé la parte del video, pero no sé la parte de la música. Entonces hicieron esto para una convención. Vince McMahon Jr. acababa de comprar la empresa de Vince McMahon Sr. en aquel momento dado. Y a Vince le gustó su trabajo. Entonces se reúne con Vince, lo conoce y el resto es historia. En aquel momento dado habían como 7 empleados nada más en la oficina de la WWE. Era un piso, una oficina para Linda, una oficina para Vince y una oficina para Brian. Entonces a Vince Senior le dice a Vince que en aquel momento dado, o la historia que Jimmy escuchó, que si le continuaba poniendo música al producto como que le iba a dañar. Antes los babyface tenían música, los heels no. Y entonces cuando salía la persona sin música ya tú sabías que iba a perder. Y él entiende que se equivocó ahí grandemente el papá de Vince. Bueno, el resto es historia. How was your direct relationship with Vince McMahon, Jim? You worked for him or with him for over 30 years, 32 years to be exactly.
Yeah.
How was your relationship with Vince?
Great. Vince was always, I mean, we were, I consider Vince a friend. So, it was a little upsetting at the end, the way things ended. But there were, as happens in corporations, there were a lot of politics involved and people trying to get my job and, but Vince and I have always gotten along. He's a really intriguing guy. He's an incredibly charismatic guy. He can be really tough. He can be a real bully. But fortunately, I did not personally get that end of him too frequently. So, I mean, he and I stood on pretty solid ground for 32 years. And earlier question when I said I wasn't really signed, for a long time, for years and years and years, Vince and I operated purely on a handshake. And I honestly don't think either one of us ever thought a thing about it. Like, oh my God, this is not good to just be operating on a handshake. We need to get some paper on this. It really wasn't until the company went public and then lawyers get involved and they saw me as a risk. It's like, oh, you can't have this kind of important guy in the organization out there like a wild card with no contract. So then I became an official employee and contracts, and not that ever really changed my relationship with Vince, but I don't know, he's a really intriguing guy, really smart, really stubborn. But one thing I always loved about him is he loves to be creatively surprised. Even though when he gives you something to do, he's always very specific. He hears something in his head, or he has a feeling. Fortunately, with me, he learned that he didn't have to spell that out musically, that he just needed to tell me how he wanted to feel with that character. And I also learned over the years that with Vince, you have to be respectful enough to give him something that he asked for. You know, like, okay, here's what you asked for. You know, okay, but I've got something else for you to hear, that because I had a whole different idea, you know, and I'll play him, I don't, you know, an opera. And I can't tell you, most of the time when I went far afield, and if I believed in it enough to actually be brave enough to play it for him, he would say, you know, damn, I never thought of that, but it works. Let's go with it. You know, so he's, when I said he was stubborn, he's stubborn in that he has a vision and he wants to get to that vision. But if you show him a different and creative road to get there that he just didn't happen to see, he completely embraces it and you know, is completely positive about it. And that's great to work for someone like that, who's not always, you know, who's not dictating to creative people exactly, you know, do this. And a lot of times when I say he's a bully, when he gets frustrated with his creative people, when they, in his opinion, they're not delivering that feeling he's trying to get to, then he can really get hard-assed about it, you know, and come down on people really, really hard, and, you know, finally get to a point of, okay, do this. And my experience always was, it's just frustration talking. He feels like he's being clear about what he's looking for, and then he doesn't get that back. And I think that's something I've seen, seems to be a common attribute in creative leaders, is they're fair up until they reach their point where, okay, I'm done. I've got to go a different direction here because you're not giving me what I'm looking for. So fortunately, I was able to largely give him what he was looking for.
So I'll translate that briefly to Spanish. La relación de Vince y Jim Johnston era buena, era una relación buena, una relación laboral. Todo comienza con un estrechón de manos, con un handshake, como él dice. No hubo un contrato inicialmente hasta que pues los abogados decidieron hacerlo oficial. No puedes tener este tipo allá afuera de esa manera, puede ser un riesgo que se vaya a otra empresa o que haga algo. Hay que ponerlo en papel y pues en ese momento pues deciden firmar y volver la relación laboral pues un hecho. Menciona que Vince, cuando estaba frustrado, o creativamente frustrado, se podía, pues pasaba de ser nice a ser pues tal vez un bully, como él dice, o una persona bastante rígida, por el hecho de que él quería algo de una manera y no se lo estaban dando. Pero que no experimentó mucho eso. Entonces Vince era bastante claro en lo que quería. Si él escuchaba una tonada en su cabeza de más o menos qué es lo que él quería, le decía a Jim, mira, esto es lo que yo quiero, y Jim le daba, mira, esto es lo que tú quieres, pero también podemos llegar por esta vía. Entonces Vince, si veía otra vía para poder llegar a lo que él quería, que él no había visto, pues la escuchaba, y esa relación fue bastante interesante. Pero sí, estuvo mucho tiempo, estuvo trabajando 32 años para la empresa. Jim, you mentioned that you already had that freedom, but he was, stubborn on one side. But did any wrestler in particular, approach you with concern or with discontent because he or she didn't want that particular, music theme? And if yes, which one? And did it work, the music theme you proposed?
There are some variants on that storyline description. First of all, for the most part, Um, I didn't deal directly with the wrestlers too
Okay.
much. Fortunately, I was sort of protected from that, because the rare times that I would deal directly with the wrestler, interestingly, frequently they didn't get the concept of entrance themes, that it's sort of like scoring a movie, that it's not really about your favorite record. And if I would speak directly with the talent, they would most frequently say they want something. Either they would say something like, when I work out with this Metallica record, and I want something like that. Or they would say, oh, I want something with the same, energy and vibe as Steve Austin's music. And I'm trapped, because I want to be kind and respectful, but what needs to be said is Metallica and Steve Austin's music have nothing to do with your character whatsoever. I remember Yoko. He called me, managed to get me on the phone, and said he wanted to change his music from the Japanese sumo wrestler stuff. And, I'm trapped now on the phone with the guy. It's like, well, what are you thinking? He goes, well, I'd like some hip hop. And I say, Yoko, you're a sumo wrestler. You're not a hip hop guy. But from his perspective, and I don't mean to be mean here, but he was like, well, but I live in LA. And, so it made perfect sense to him that, why couldn't I have a hip hop thing? And so in general, no, I didn't get involved with the talent. There were certainly times when people, the talent, the company didn't get a theme, or thought like, wow, this will never work, or hated it. I never spoke to him directly, but Randy Orton apparently hated his theme. I don't know if he still does, but and I don't even know why, but apparently that was true. I never spoke with him about it. When I first did the theme for Goldust, it was so different and so kind of not a wrestling theme that people were off-put, and then it ended up becoming, one of the more popular themes. But I give him a lot of credit, because one thing that's such an important element in themes is, yes, it has to be the right theme, but I describe it, it's like a dance, and the theme is the dance partner, and the wrestler has to learn to live inside that theme. And we can talk about it later, but and while I told you before this interview that I don't do trash talking interviews, but that the closest I'll get to being critical is, that absolutely, I think that I want to slap Vince upside the head, because I don't know what's happened to the music. Is so bad these days. It's like just sound effects and noises and stuff. It doesn't have anything to do with the characters and the storylines anymore. And that's the essence of this business, are these characters and storylines, and that's currently lost. I don't get it. But just go down the list. Undertaker and his music, they're one thing. They're Steve Austin, Hunter in the Game. Triple H, he is the Game. It isn't like that coincidentally is his music. It couldn't, And it goes as far as one of the frustrating things is when I would write a theme, particularly for someone who's really popular, it would so stick that I could never use that singer again. I mean, most of the time I played all the instruments and everything myself. So the music, you know, I could do. But when it was a song that the sound of that person's voice would become so integral with that theme that I could never use the guy or the woman again to sing on another theme, because it'd be like, oh, that's the girl who sang for, you know, Trish Stratus or something. So that was always a great frustration. Like Chris Warren on Degeneration X. I mean, I did actually use him twice, but that was only because early on, before we did the game, there was a song called My Time that he did for Triple H in China. And but then that got replaced by the game. So I got lucky with that one.
Yeah, so I'll translate that briefly to Spanish. En aquel momento dado, le pregunto sobre si había un luchador o alguien que se molestara por algún tema en particular que le propuso y no le gustó. Menciona que él no trabajaba directamente con los luchadores en la mayoría de los casos, simplemente era con Vince. Pero Yokozuna en una ocasión lo llama y le dice, oye, esta música de sumo que tienes, no la quiero, quítala, quiero hip hop, pero tu personaje no va con el hip hop. Sí, pero yo vivo en Los Ángeles, pensaba Yokozuna, y pues en su mente hacía sentido. Ahora tengo este tipo hablando conmigo por teléfono, y al igual que él, Randy Orton, Randy no le gustó el tema musical de entrada que él le compuso en un momento dado. Goldust, por ejemplo, el tema de Goldust era algo completamente distinto que funcionó y le da bastante crédito a Goldust por ello. Pero hay algo en particular, y es que la crítica que le hace en estos momentos es que la música de ahora no encaja. Él dice que no hace trash talking en las entrevistas, pero que le dan las ganas de darle la cabeza a Vince McMahon en algunas ocasiones, porque él siente que pues, Undertaker y su tema de entrada es uno, encajan con el personaje, está escrito particularmente para el personaje. The Game para Triple H, pues Triple H es The Game, entonces encajan perfectamente. Pero ahora mismo no estamos viendo eso, simplemente vemos música pues, porque sí. Y hace un comentario bastante interesante, y es que en aquel momento dado el artista que lo utilizaba, pues él hacía la música por lo general y componía y todo, pero el vocals que él utilizaba, la voz, no podía muchas veces utilizarla porque pegaba tanto que ya, por ejemplo, el de DX, que es Chris, pues él pudo utilizarlo para DX y para My Time, pero entonces para The Game ya no se pudo, hay que irse entonces con otra persona, y así sucesivamente con el resto de las cosas. Entonces funcionaba tanto y era un poco frustrante en aquel momento dado ese aspecto, por el hecho de que pues ya pegó, perfecto, excelente, pero ya no puedo utilizar esto y me quedé corto pues de algún artista que otro. Jim, what was the easiest...
Wait a second, I have to interrupt for a second. Okay. I can never do your job because you have to have such a good memory. Now I feel guilty giving a complete answer to you. Like I want to keep them short so you don't have to remember everything I said. It's amazing to have that you can repeat that entire storyline.
Thank you. No,
I'm very impressed.
Thank you so much. But just feel free to continue speaking completely. We love these kinds of stories, so this is perfect. Jim, which was the easiest and the most complicated theme song to create? Because we heard on an interview with WWE that to many of us it was a surprise. Like, The Game is an anthem, and you composed it in 5 freaking minutes. I mean, what kind of genius does that? You have voices for Randy Orton, No Chance in Hell for Vince McMahon. Here Comes the Money for Shane McMahon. The Ultimate Warrior theme song that every time I hear that, I just imagine him with the ropes. The Brood theme song, which is amazing, among many, many others. Stone Cold and the Glass Breaking, The Rock, etc., among others. Which was the easiest to compose and the hardest one? And if you can, you know, play a few seconds of each one.
You know, I guess I don't think of them in terms of easy and hard. I so love what I do that even if an idea doesn't come instantaneously, it's not bad news for me. Or, you know, I guess the only time it would be bad news if it was in earlier on when we had satellite feeds of the music, you know, and you just saw the clock ticking. And I just found out about something today at lunchtime, and I've got to have a theme written and recorded by 6 o'clock to go out on a satellite feed or something. But that's really not so much about composing the theme. I can't explain it, you know. I mean, I'm a pretty spiritual guy. I believe that I'm kind of a conduit, and I get a lot of great stuff from God above that I just got lucky enough to, it gets funneled through me, and he seems to give me a never-ending supply of stuff. While you were doing the Spanish thing, I keep all my ideas on my iPhone on a little recording app, which I fill up with 3,000 times as many ideas than I would ever have time to record in my lifetime. Simple is so good. You know, when I find myself getting too complex, like Gold Dust was by far the most complex thing, you know, I mean, and that's what made it so unusual. And that way, and in that sense, it was good that it was that unusual. But the game, you know, the production is one thing. It's like, how do you take this idea and how are you going to produce it? Are you going to use orchestral instruments? Or are you going to just do guitars and drums? But, you know, I'm just on an acoustic guitar here, and pardon me if I screw it up because I have to remember. But it's such a simple thing, you know, and this is what happens when they first come to me is I'm just fooling around on piano or guitar and something happens, and that was just... So I get something like that and I go, okay, that's cool. I can work with that. And then it just becomes starting to fill it out with, you know, and you mentioned Warriors, you know, Warriors with the ropes and stuff. So that was obvious. All I did was take the ropes, bum, 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 and put it on the guitar. You know, yeah. I mean, it's just, that's what he's doing. I guess one that, I guess relative to your question, I guess it would have to be categorized as difficult in that I didn't write it instantaneously at all, was Undertaker's theme, in that I got kind of stumped with like, well, what's a dead guy's music? You know, I mean, I don't know. And finally, what saved me, it was, then I veered over into thinking like, oh, okay, well, a dead guy's music, funeral. It would be like something that would be maybe played at a funeral. And then I thought like, well, that'd be like really, you know, that very soft, slow chords, very quiet in a church. It needs to be more exciting than that. And then I also thought there needs to be some, funerals are only really sad when you know the person who's died. Well, this has to have some element of like tragedy to it so that everyone feels a little bit of both darkness and sadness. And then, so I thought of a child's theme, and then I wrote it really high on the piano. Hopefully you can hear this. Sorry.
That was freaking brilliant. qué pedazo de privilegio tenemos. Jim Johnston acaba de tocar la música de The Undertaker, un poquito de la música de The Game, pero volviendo a la pregunta, él no ve un tema como complicado o como sencillo, porque es algo que le gusta, es algo que le apasiona. Entonces, si hablamos, pues, vamos a decirlo de esta manera, de nivel de complejidad de horas de trabajo, lo más complicado es el due date, el tiempo que de repente mira el reloj a las 12 del mediodía, midday, y a las 6 de la tarde tenga algo que entregar. Pues en ese aspecto, pues es un poquito complicado. Pero lo interesante de esto está en que él describe el tema de Goldust particularmente como uno de los más difíciles para componer por la complejidad que tenía. Y entonces él entra en la mentalidad del personaje. Por ejemplo, The Ultimate Warrior, pues ¿qué él hace? Pues el ruido de los tambores, como en la escuela, tan, 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 tan. Y de esa manera él crea ese tema que le tomó tiempo, sí, pero lo que llegaba a la idea. Por ejemplo, el de The Undertaker en particular fue uno de los más difíciles para crear, pero que era como que, ¿cómo? O sea, ¿qué música escucha una persona que ya está muerta? Pues entonces pienso en iglesia, pienso en coro, pienso en música de niño, y entonces comienza a desarrollar esta tonada completamente hasta que obtiene el producto final de lo que conocemos hoy día como el mítico tema que Jim acaba de tocar aquí en estos momentos. Jim, what music theme? First of all, it is an honor for us to hear you playing live, like Lucha Libre Line, those mythic themes, those anthems for us. So thank you for that. What music theme did you thought you were going to be, it was going to be a boom, or you thought it was going to work, but at the end it didn't?
Well, I can't think of one, and I don't want to sound arrogant in that sense. It's not so much that. I think it's more that by the time I wouldn't play something for Vince until I believed in it. And then it doesn't get by him until he also believes in it. So then when it gets to the talent, it's pretty much like we really believe this is going to work. And which is not to say that we wouldn't frequently make modifications. One of the first things I notice when I watch someone come out to a new piece of music is how they're moving. And because it's such an important thing that we all have an internal clock, like the speed at which we all had that experience where we're walking down a street, and we're just inherently, we walk faster than the friend we're walking with. And we're always like busting on them. It's like, move your ass. You walk so slowly. What is your problem? You just have different clocks. So when people come down the ramp, the energy of their theme, the tempo of their theme has to match that internal clock, so that the theme is not forcing them to move faster than they want, but it's also not dragging them back, holding them back. Like they're anxious to. It'd be like giving Warrior a slow, instead of giving him theme, it'd be like. It would kill him. I mean, he wouldn't know what to do. So I would look for, does the guy, is he moving naturally down the ramp, or do I feel like he's being rushed? And so, we might speed it up, slow it down. Vince might hear it in context in the arena and say like, hey, can you add more guitar there or something? Or can you turn up the lead part in the middle, or let's switch more quickly to this B section. But there were definitely times when people just could not play into their theme, and generally, and I'm not going to give names here because generally it was guys who there was reasonable amount of confidence in them, but when it actually came to being able to entertain a crowd, they didn't really know how to connect. with the crowd. So the whole thing just kind of went flat, you know. And the opposite extreme of that is The Rock, who he comes out and he holds that audience absolutely in the palm of his hand. I mean, they're hanging on his every word. And, you know, that's a true gift to be able to do that. And all the different wrestlers over the years have had different levels of gift in that regard. So, you know, some people it feels forced, you know, they're in the ring with the microphone doing their spiel, and basically you're kind of saying in your back of your mind, okay, let's wrap it up. And other guys, you could listen to them talk forever.
I'll translate that to Spanish. En aquel momento dado le pregunto, primero que todo, ¿cuál es el tema musical que tal vez no funcionó, que él pensaba que iba a funcionar? Él me dice que, bueno, no es por sonar arrogante, pero no es que no haya funcionado, simplemente hasta ahora todo lo que él hizo funcionó o llegó a donde tenía que llegar. Simplemente pues había que en algunos casos tal vez escucharle una modificación, siempre pensando en ese reloj interno que hay constantemente en las personas. Unas personas caminan más rápido, unas personas caminan más lento, y no es como que come on, hurry up, vamos, mueve tu trasero, como él dice. No, sino que cada persona tiene su ritmo a la hora de caminar en cuanto a la industria, y lo mismo con la música. Entonces había que tal vez acelerar un poco, bajar un poco, dependiendo de lo que había. Y también Vince McMahon, al escucharlo, pues decía, mira, se modifica esto, no se modifica esto. Y también tenía que ver mucho con los talentos que una vez salían por la cortina no causaban ningún impacto, que salían y como que era como que meh. Pero entonces del otro lado tenías a The Rock. The Rock era el tipo que llegabas y todo el mundo se quedaba, wow, es The Rock, y los tenía aquí, los tenía en la palma de su mano constantemente. Y él decía que también variaba el tema musical y cómo lo componía por la persona como hablaba. O sea, había personas que hablaban y eran como que, ay, ya cállate, vamos entonces a ayudarlos con ese team. Pero The Rock, por ejemplo, y otras personas, tú podías escucharlo hablando por horas y horas.
All the themes, particularly the more successful ones, when I was talking about simple, because I was struck before when I was playing the game, it's like, yeah, that really is simple. But it's amazing how powerful music is, that a few notes, and I was just thinking of a few other things that are just such simple little grooves, DX. Austin. You know, they're just the Rock. You know, so you start with this very simple foundation that's memorable, that's catchy, and then you work out how to produce it in. So, you know, what was another one I was just thinking of? A very different one, Randy Orton's thing. You know, it's just this very dark, sort of bluesy thing, which I wrote on an acoustic guitar. I remember just like this. You got your rules and your religion, all designed to keep you safe. And the rules start getting broken. You know, it's one chord, and then it goes. You know, it's so where it comes from, I don't know, but it's fun when they show up, because you get that feeling. When it happens, it's like I'm a third-party listener or a fan, and I'm completely removed from the guitar, and you start playing something, and it's like, oh, that sounds cool. You know, it's like you're listening to somebody else play or something. It comes from somewhere else. I don't know. It's all a mystery, but it's a fun mystery.
I'll translate that to Spanish. Todo comienza como una nota sencilla, algo catchy, por ejemplo, The X, como él mencionó, el básico, el pie fuerte, The Rock, Stone Cold. Ese pie fuerte es la clave de todo esto. Y en base a eso, pues él comienza a construir esa canción, pero tiene que ser un pie fuerte que sea catchy, que todo el mundo se acuerde, que le llame la atención. Y lo interesante de esto es que él menciona que el tema de música de Randy Orton, el que toca o canta Rev Theory eventualmente, que Voices, él lo compuso en una guitarra acústica y tal como la acaba de tocar ahora mismo. Y se trata de eso mismo, de encontrar esta nota perfecta dentro de la música que encaje perfectamente pues, con el personaje. Jim, how do you manage, to be a key person in WWE's success, specifically during the Monday Night Wars? And do you pressure yourself, or were you pressured by the company in order to, be that key factor in WWE's victory on the Monday Night Wars?
Again, I think this one goes back to, I just love what I do. I'm always constantly coming up with ideas for music. It's just, sometimes it's literally frustrating because I know I will not have time. And one of my biggest, I guess, creative, more production challenges that I face all the time is I'll be working on one thing, and I'll be playing that guitar part for it. And then I'll just, in a moment, I'll just do something different. And I'll go like, oh, that sounds cool. And now my mind is completely, utterly distracted because it's over here and I'm thinking about this other idea now. And it forever, since I was a young boy, it's that distraction will carry me away because I get so excited about the new idea. I want to stop what I'm working on and go work on the new idea. One thing that actually worked in my favor and probably did during the intensity of the Monday Night Wars thing was the incredible deadlines that were constant within WWE. They were sort of an override of the distraction because there wasn't time to be distracted. It's like it would be all intense to finish this theme, and the second I would hand that tape off to someone, it would be, the next theme in line that had to be completed. So it was like forced therapy or something to get over my distraction problems. There wasn't time to pursue the other ideas. So
I'll translate that. Le pregunto sobre su rol, porque Jim Johnston fue una parte sumamente importante e integral en la guerra de los lunes por la noche. Y se trata de si se sentía presionado, pues, por estar en medio de esta guerra. Y él decía que para él siempre eso era parte del thrill, esa parte de la emoción, de que pues el Jeff comenzaba a bregar con una idea e inmediatamente ir a la otra y tenía una, pues perfecto, vamos a salir de esta para entrar a la otra. Y es algo que funcionó a su favor, al igual que funcionó a su favor, que pues cuando ya había creado algo ya tenía otra idea en la mano, como que mira, quiero esto. Y pues para no distraerse o algo, funcionó perfectamente y simplemente encajó su manera de operar en la vida en general con esta guerra de los lunes por la noche. Jim, you worked for the WWE for 32 years. Do you thought that you were going to be, a lifelong employee? And why did, after being such an integral part of the WWE, why did they parted ways with you, or how did it work?
I certainly never thought I would be doing this one thing. Well, I mean, it was purely happenstance that I got involved with Vince and WWE at all. It wasn't like I was hounding them, sending them demo tapes, trying to get in the door there. It was this complete happenstance meeting. And, how it ended, as I mentioned earlier, there was just some really bad people there. and catering to Vince's ego and a couple of other higher up egos, making them feel like this is the direction you've got to go, and it just never sat with me, and then I kind of kept getting kind of funneled out, and it's just not my personality to get in there and get in the dirt with people. Although hindsight, there's certainly a couple of people I'd like to get in the dirt with, but you know, it was kind of like, you know, if that's the route you want to go, then that's the route you want to go. But I guess there's a certain, I don't know how you would describe it. I hate to say this, but there is a certain satisfaction that the music now is so bad, because it makes me feel better about what I did contribute, and knowing that music was better, you know, and it does make me feel bad for a bunch of the wrestlers now, because without good music you can't become a big star. I don't believe it's possible. You have to have that, because the music is just like a score in a movie. It's what leads the fans' emotions. You know, it's what connects you. It's a very visceral, very deeply emotional connection, and that's always what I went for, and that's what's missing now. So it's this sort of artificial, it's big and exciting, you know, it's loud, and it's lots of crashing sound effects and explosions, and but there's nothing behind it. There's nothing. There's not this. You know, there's not this way that you can take those themes and boil it down to, like, what's the core? What's its foundation? There is no foundation. The foundation is drum loops and sort of meaningless stuff. And so what that yields is just a sense of kind of meaninglessness, and the feeling that all these wrestlers are just very generic, because they feel very generic. They don't. It's very hard to stand out. So I feel bad about that, and you know, it'd be so easy to fix. So it's a mystery to me, but I just feel I'm so. It's so important to me, or there's only one thing that's important about music, which is, what does it make you feel? It's not how loud it is. It's not how many sound effects there are. It's not how many explosions. Does it make you feel something? And then if it does, that's a successful piece of music. So.
I'll translate that to Spanish. En aquel momento dado le pregunto por qué toman caminos separados la empresa con él, y él dice, pues, como me explicó anteriormente, habían personas, pues, hablándole al oído al jefe, hablándole al oído a los superiores directivos, etcétera, etcétera, porque querían su trabajo, pero nunca se sentaron con él, pues mira, pues debemos irnos en esta dirección. Nunca se sentaron, nunca lo intentaron, y lograron convencer a Vince y al resto de los jefes de hacerlo. Él dice que no va a lanzar a nadie al fango, he's not gonna throw dirt to anyone, como él dice, pero pues sí hay personas que les gustaría arrojarlas al fango, pero anyways, así es la vida. Referente al producto actual de la empresa, él, en cuanto a música, no le gusta, él entiende que es malísimo, y eso en cierto aspecto le da un poco de satisfacción, porque su producto era tan bueno que todavía persiste, todavía está, y en comparación con el de ahora, que se siente mucho más genérico, no está esos cimientos, ese foundation, como él dice, en cuanto al tema musical, como el de The Game que él estaba tocando ahora mismo, y se siente más genérico, y él entiende que eso es uno de los motivos principales por los que pues no existe una gran superestrella ahora mismo, porque todo es muy genérico y la música o este efecto de crear el personaje es más como un microondas que cualquier otra cosa. Simplemente lo hacen, salen del paso y ya, pero cuando tú las descompones o las sacas por pedazos, las segmentas y vas ahí cuál es el foundation de tu canción, de tu música, pues realmente no la hay. Jim, my first question is, are you a pro wrestling fan? And if yes or no, have you ever been, approached by All Elite Wrestling to do what you were doing for WWE, but with them?
I'm not really a wrestling fan, but it's interesting you mentioned that because I feel the same about AEW, and I've forgotten who I spoke with, but someone over there, and I was very candid with the same thing. It's like your product would be infinitely better if the music's better. The music helps somewhere between helps make stars and makes stars. And it's the same thing. It just feels like it's evolved to now there's just coincidentally a piece of music that plays when someone comes to the ring. It doesn't really have, you could play it for the next guy who came out, and it's like you can tell who's coming out because they still have some sort of signature sound up front. But what they're missing is, I believe, it's not about a signature sound. It's about a signature sound that has something to do with the story and the character. The Undertaker's bell is not just a signature sound. It's a death stroke. It's the bell tolling for death. So it's Austin's glass break. It's not about glass breaking. It's about Austin breaks through barriers. There are no barriers that he is not going to break through. So people have asked, like, well, how did you ever come up with the glass break for Austin? If you think about it in that context, it's pretty obvious. Like this is the guy who is not afraid of anything. He will break through any barrier. He will break through any wall. So viewed in that light, a glass break is kind of the obvious solution to that. So the same deal with AEW. I don't understand why the music's not better.
I'll translate that to Spanish. Le pregunto si AEW se le ha acercado su opinión actual del producto y si es fanático de la lucha libre. Pues él no se considera así un fanático de la lucha libre. Jim es un músico. Él no es fanático de la lucha libre, pero sí obviamente ha visto el producto de AEW y ha hablado con personas de AEW sobre el producto musical actual. Él entiende que le hacen falta varias cosas. Es muy genérico, pero principalmente es el hecho de que le hace falta ese signature sound, ese sonido específico que te caracteriza a un luchador. Por ejemplo, la campana del Undertaker, el pan, don, don, que tenía los 10 campanazos o lo que hacían antes, pues obviamente es la campana de la muerte llamándote. El cristal de Stone Cold, la gente que le pregunta cómo pues, se vino la idea de esa mente, pues bueno, simple. Stone Cold es un tipo que rompe todas las barreras. Y que es lo más básico de romper el cristal y de causar ese shock. Entonces, pues, no, le hace falta ese glass break, le hace falta esa campana, ese bell, como él menciona. Y pues, obviamente, tampoco es fanático del producto actual de AEW. Jim, would you be interested in either making a return for WWE if proposed the idea, or working for AEW or for any other pro wrestling company to do music with them?
I'd write music for any of them. I'd be happy to, but in a very different circumstance. I'm not interested in full-time employment because I'm doing it, I'm loving my life here in the studio. But yeah, writing some themes for people, that'd be fun.
Awesome, I'll translate that. Que si le llamaría la atención trabajar o regresar para WWE o trabajar con AEW o alguna otra empresa, sí, claro, él está abierto y está disponible y está interesado, pero con unas circunstancias muy diferentes porque él ya no está dispuesto a ir a un contrato a tiempo completo. Él ama su vida en el estudio, él ama su tiempo libre y ama su paz mental sobre cualquier otra cosa, así que esa parte no lo digo, pero pues es obvio, o sea, estar en un ambiente estresor cambia mucho en tu vida y pues se ve muy feliz y se siente muy feliz en este punto de su vida. Jim, which is the music theme that, you know, you composed it, you created it, and once you hear it again, like it gives you chills, or it is the most memorable theme song to you in your heart, like, wow, this has to be my crown jewel of my collection?
The crown jewel, I don't know, but there are a bunch that I hear, and I get a, you know, I enjoy it because I kind of view it hindsight as a third party. Like when I hear things, I don't enjoy it in the sense like, wow, Jim, boy, damn, did you do a good job with that one? Like, you really are great. It's much more like just hearing a favorite song on the radio and you go, I love that song. And so if I'm going through stuff and I hear something coincidentally, or I play something when I'm going through old records on old files on a hard drive, come upon something, it's great to listen to this stuff, and I'll remember, you know, kind of maybe some part of what I was thinking, and it's also interesting too because a lot of the themes that are songs, at the time I felt like I was writing, you know, something for that character, but then after time has passed and listening back, it's, and this happens too with songs that I just write, or I feel like I just write, and then I listen to them later and I feel like, oh my God, it's like might as well be a page out of a diary. It's so absolutely literal, autobiographic about what was happening in my life at that time. I'll listen to songs and I'll realize that they are all, or most are autobiographical in some way, because to get them written, I had to take some part of the necessary storyline of that character, but find something that mattered to me about it. You know, I've told this story before. When I wrote Vince's theme, it was a time when I was really angry with him. And, you know, because I'd seen him be just a big bully, and I just not a part of him I admire there are lots of things to admire about him. And it just seemed so unnecessary. And so I wrote that from the standpoint of critically, basically, like, you've got no chance. You've got no chance against this guy, you know, because I mean, believe me, he can be a brute, you know, and he will not give up, and he will not suddenly be a nice guy to you. Okay, you've got no chance in hell. He'll take it as far as you want to take it. Like, if you want to keep pushing back, believe me, he will keep pushing forward. So, you know, that's just his personality. And like, for all of us, generally speaking, our best attributes are also our worst attributes. You know, and I think that's true for Vince, where he's got this incredible drive and very creative, and I've seen him do incredibly gracious, charitable, emotional things, positive. But you know, there's always the other side of that coin, and it has the insane intensity. You know, it's people, friends over the years have frequently said, wow, it must be so great, you know, that you've got this creative gene or something, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, it's great a lot of the time. And other times it's really, really horrible, because like when I have bad dreams, I'm talking, I have creative bad dreams. I have really, really bad dreams. And when, you know, when in high school, I break up with my girlfriend, you know, I don't just imagine her like kissing some other guy. I get 70mm full color movies playing in my head of, you know, her making passionate love with other people. So there are always these two sides. But sorry, getting back to your original question, certainly a favorite that jumps out, which is not a WWE song. It's a song that I wrote for my wife called "With My Baby Tonight." And basically, Vince one day said, I need a country song. And I said, well, I've got a country song. And I played it for him and he liked it. And so we used that. But that was never written for anything having to do with wrestling. You know, I like deeply dramatic music, so I've always certainly had a soft spot for Undertaker's theme. I don't know, you know, Michael, I think probably I like, at the end of the day, while I'm not a gigantic fan of pro wrestling, I am a gigantic fan of music. So I think I'm probably a big fan of probably the same themes that you're a big fan of. You know, I don't think there's probably much of a difference.
I'll translate that to Spanish. En aquel momento le pregunto cuál es la joya de su corona, cuál es el crown jewel, cuál es esa pieza de música que cuando la escucha se le eriza la piel. Obviamente menciona que pues como que no tiene una favorita en cuanto a la industria, sino que todas marcaron su vida porque contaba un capítulo de su autobiografía en aquel momento dado, porque cuando él da hacia atrás el tiempo, cuando él escucha la música que él estaba creando, era que algo estaba pasando en su vida en ese momento, y por eso era que componía tan bien y funcionaba tan perfecto. Por ejemplo, cuando él compone el tema de Vince McMahon, el de No Chance in Hell, pues Vince estaba en modo bully con él, estaba difícil, entonces él estaba bien molesto con Vince, y entonces tú no tienes una oportunidad en el infierno con este tipo. Si tú comienzas a empujar hacia atrás a Vince McMahon empuja hacia el frente hasta que te derrota, y así es que nace este tema de No Chance in Hell. Menciona que uno de los temas favoritos de él no tiene que ver nada con lucha libre, que es With My Baby Tonight, que es un tema que él compuso para su esposa en particular y quedó enamorado de ese tema, pero que en general de lucha libre, pues los temas que a mí me gustan o que a todos nos gustan, los fanáticos de la lucha libre, son temas que a él le llaman la atención. Jim, it's been, sir, an honor to have you here.
Oh my, don't even say it.
It is an honor for us to have you here as our guest today. Last but not least, before the interview started, we were speaking about you were actually composing and creating a Spanish theme song, you know, outside the pro wrestling industry, and that you were actually, you love Latin American music, or Latin American culture.
Yeah, as I mentioned it, for reasons I don't understand from a very early age, I have always been drawn to Spanish music and Spanish rhythms, Latin rhythms, just something about it that I find so attractive. And I think it's that Latin people are very passionate, and that I think that comes out in their music, whether it be traditional music from Spain and classical guitar, or more the Caribbean island, all the different variants, and then going down, you know, and all the way over to like mariachi music, which, you know, it's not, I'm not listening to mariachi music in my car, but I love the joy that's in mariachi music. And, you know, there's, I feel so bad for, I wish I could throw all the crooks out of office and drug cartels in Mexico so that all the incredibly great Mexican people could get back to living their lives without those morons screwing everything up. But there's such, the joy comes out in the music so easily. And the passion and romance and the drama of life comes out in Latin music, more so, in my opinion, than lots of other genres. And I just rhythmically, I love Latin percussion, and there are lots of times that I've done something that I'll throw Latin percussion in something that has nothing to do with Latin percussion, but it's like, screw it, it sounds good to me. So, it works. And there's, interestingly too, when I've done rock music, when I do rock themes, I've always noticed, and I don't quite get this either, probably because I grew up listening to Motown music a lot. I just play naturally with a certain amount of a funk rhythm. I don't play with a straight rock rhythm. I'll give an example. DX is an example of that. If there was a straight rock kind of metal song or something, it'd be much more, but I play it with this funk thing that also, to my ear, has a little bit of, like, if you just imagined a Latin percussion group behind this, it would work perfectly. And I love the way all these different cultures can work perfectly and seamlessly together. And I think that's why music is frequently a vehicle that brings people together that might be feuding otherwise, but you lay a little music on top of it, and suddenly the cake gets very, very edible by all parties, and people get along. And so yeah, I love Spanish music. Yeah, and the song you're talking about is actually not a theme. It's just a song I wrote called Guitar Cry for Me. It's a very, sort of broken-hearted love song. But I wrote it in English, and then I was playing it one day, and I thought, and I happened to be playing it because I picked up my nylon string classical Spanish guitar. And suddenly it's like, oh my God, this is a Spanish song. This is not an English song. This is supposed to be Spanish. So I got a guy to sing it. It was great. So
I'll translate that to Spanish. Jim menciona su amor o su interés por la música latinoamericana desde los mariachis. Digo, los mariachis no es que algo que te escuches en el carro, como él dice, pero la pasión en la música y la pasión en los latinos es algo que siempre le ha llamado la atención. Y, por ejemplo, cuando él componía música para la empresa WWE, tal vez él lo veía normal componiendo, pero en su mente estaba como que, ¿cómo sonaría esto con un conjunto musical latinoamericano en la parte de atrás haciendo todo el ritmo? Y era algo que le llamaba mucho la atención de ellos. Hay un tema en específico que él actualmente está componiendo, que él dice, de repente se levanta y dice, oye, espérate, esto es algo como que en español sonaría mejor, en español es el deal que tiene que hacer esto. Y pues está en ese proceso musical constantemente inspirado, constantemente feliz haciendo lo que hace. Y la música es eso, es su vida. Más allá de su escape, es su vida. Y pues obviamente ama a los latinos, ama la música latina, y pues su música, gran parte de su música fue inspirado, como él dice, desde los percusionistas latinoamericanos hasta los keynotes básicos. De igual manera, hay mucho de ello que tiene algo de influencia del ritmo y la pasión latinoamericana musical que tanto amamos. Jim, as mentioned, it's been an honor to have you here as a guest. Thank you so much for your time, for your sharing your notes, your work, your wisdom. and your art with us. It's like, to me, it is a privilege, and I don't know, to all the fans of Lucha Libre Online as well. So yeah, as mentioned, thank you so much for your time. Always wishing you the best of lucks and success in both your career and personal life. And yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Michael, thank you so much. Pleasure.
Thank you.